Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer here with Mike Gallagher to walk you through this 11-game slate. A little bit more action today than yesterday's 3-game slates, but a good one ahead. Lots of injuries to discuss. Mike, how are you on this fine Wednesday?
Doing good. I hope I could pay my mortgage in Skolansky bucks with getting Utah +2 and -6.5 Raptors, and love to see it, man. And yeah, can I just go quick little Brian Windhorst and go like, why would the Warriors do that? Why would they call up Jason Wiseman before they put their injury report on? It was so obvious to me when I listened to Steve Kerr talking about how tired his guys were that like it was so obvious to me that they were going to sit people. So yeah, they got a big road trip coming up. They're playing Boston, big national TV game. Then they go on the East Coast trip, 2 back-to-backs in that road trip. They just look dead. They got they got Nemharded hard. So yeah, they need a rest day real bad before the schedule gets really rough. So we could talk about that in a little bit, or even right now. But yeah, doing great today. I got a hike in, so feeling awesome.
Well, yeah, let's start there. Let's start with the Warriors rest situation tonight. We've seen the Warriors rest players in bulk a few times this year, twice already, both against the New Orleans Pelicans. But in those games, there was one difference than what they've done tonight, which is that Klay Thompson was not ruled out alongside Steph Curry and Draymond Green. Now, in those games, they did have Andrew Wiggins, I believe for both. I'm not sure if it was both or just one.
One, I think it was.
They did have Andrew Wiggins. So, you could say, okay, maybe it's similar that they're having Klay instead of Wiggins, but the two guys are very different in terms of the stages of their careers and managing workload. So for me, the not having Klay ruled out was a little bit of a red flag that this might not be a full-on development game, and one that they're still trying to get, but understanding that, basically like see how it goes. So I could see them playing the main guys like really big minutes if they're playing well. I also could see it, right? Big if, certainly. But if things don't go well, I could see them pulling back quite a bit. I think there's kind of a wide range of outcomes here with guys like Klay and Looney. I don't think there's a big range of outcomes with Jordan Poole. I think he's going to play a lot, pretty much regardless. We've seen him play a bunch in the games that they've been non-competitive in this spot. So I think he's really, really stable for minutes. And then how do you expect the rest of the rotation to shake out tonight?
Yeah, so a lot going on here. One, you got the matchup. You got big Utah. So honestly, before I started thinking things through, because we saw the last game, it was Moses Moody who was the first sub. And I think they wanted to play Moody more. But in the second half, they subbed in Kuminga early. They actually put Kuminga on Andrew Nemhard because he was just completely roasting them. We'll talk about him later for sure. But so I think they're going to start big. So that would mean Jordan Poole at the 1, Klay at the 2, Kuminga defensively will be a 3. I think Andrew Lamb will be the 4. He's been locked in the minutes. He rebounds. Anthony, I'm sorry. Got my Andrews and Anthony's mixed up. Him and then Looney, which we could talk about, which we bet already. But it's worth noting that that front court has been really bad. 38 minutes, 86 offensive rating. I just think they've got to lean into defense. And they've got to lean into rebounding, and they need the size. So I think it makes sense to go that way. I think Moody's in the rotation. Certainly DiVincenzo. James Wiseman will get minutes. Probably gets 1 stint per half, maybe 2 in halves if it's going well in his first sub. But yeah, it's definitely. I'm almost positive Kuminga is going to start because they're really believing his ball pressure. He's going to get the Lauri Markkanen matchup. So I feel pretty good about his minutes. He's not shooting at all. So you guys could talk about more on the DFS show, but there's a lot of ceiling. I think they really need his role defensively here. So I could see his minutes getting elevated. Obviously, tremendous foul risk. Fouled out in 6 minutes guarding Andrew Nemhard. That's really all you need to say. So, yeah, I think that's kind of the way it goes. Mostly summed up. Maybe we see. I think Moody's minutes will be pretty solid regardless. I think Jordan Poole's playing better. We've seen the last 5 games. For the last 5 games, he looks more comfortable. I actually like the matchup against Utah. Utah's really good at limiting 3-pointers, but more off-ball stuff. They're the best team at stopping spot-up plays. So, I think that mostly covers it. But just going back to Klay, I think Klay's like more of a rhythm thing. because he's talked about having a rhythm and coming back from injury. I don't know if he wants to take off this much time. So that's my theory. I don't know if it's valid or not, but I mean that's kind of the difference, right? Clay's missed so much time. I think that's kind of how you can rationalize why he's in there. And then you mentioned the Wiggins thing. I think that's a little bit different. So you're not completely gutting yourself at on-ball defense. And you're just asking so much out of Kuminga. But I think that mostly sums it up.
Yeah, a couple things. So I think it's very likely that 4 of the starters are Poole, Thompson, Looney, and Kuminga. I think the 5th starter is the unknown spot. I think the names that would be in contention would be Anthony Lamb, Dante DiVincenzo, and Moses Moody. I think Moody is a little bit less likely just simply because of the guard situation. If DiVincenzo starts, I think that's a signal that Ryan Rollins is playing a decent bit tonight. Because otherwise DiVincenzo, I think, would be sort of the backup point guard, basically handle that role in running the second unit. And I think Lamb is probably most likely. That would allow them to play Weissman as a pure backup center, JaMychal Green as a floating backup center, backup 4, and kind of piece things together that way. They also, have Patrick Baldwin Jr. that they could include in the rotation as well. In terms of, the playing time and the ceiling for these guys, I think the ceiling is very high for Clay, Poole, Kuminga. I think it's high for Looney. I think the floor is really low too. Which, look, we took Looney unders. That's more of a mean median thing. But I think the floor is really low too. And then I think the guys who roles are largely unaffected, I think, are going to be like Anthony Lamb and JaMychal Green. Like Anthony Lamb might play a ton of minutes, but it's going to be pretty low usage, and he's going to be a guy that I probably would be looking to fade in DFS if he's starting, and he's really highly owned. But that's kind of my initial read. I think Poole and Kuminga are the guys that I feel best about on the Warriors tonight.
Yep. And I think, so just going to the matchup too, I think I'm with you that Dante DiVincenzo makes more sense than Moody, because Kuminga's guarding Laurie. You're going to put Clay or Poole on the ball. I mean, you're going to probably put I think Poole can guard Conley, assuming Conley comes back, but you're setting yourself kind of behind the 8 ball with initial actions and making people chase around on a team that's pretty tired, on a team that doesn't have chemistry. It does kind of make a little bit of sense to maybe go that way. But you're just, I mean, Clay's tall too. Maybe you could put Clay on Vanderbilt. I think that kind of works too. So I think it's pretty close between those two guys.
The other notes that I'd leave here before we move on is just that, I'm sure Golden State is thinking very long-term here, but right now they're basically tied with Utah in the standings. So this is an opponent that, they may end up competing with for play-in type stuff. I don't know if they think of Utah that way. That would work in the favor of maybe these guys play heavier minutes than you might first think. On the flip side, Utah is a team that all year long has played very hard and really beaten teams with effort. And if the Warriors are just gassed, and this could get out of hand pretty quickly. So I think it's a really interesting situation. We'll talk about it more on the DFS show tonight with myself and Gary, pending Gary is feeling better. If not, it could be another. It could be another Mike Gallagher.
I am all-star feeling today, baby. Let's go.
It could be another Gallagher.
I'm feeling amazing today. I wrote matchups. I was up till 2 a.m. last night. So yeah, let's start early and let's talk for 2 hours, man. I'm ready to go.
Let's move from the Warriors rest to the Lakers rest situation. We saw last night, very frustrating. You can blame Mike Gallagher's jinx of not wanting to say anything about AD going to the locker room last night, but AD apparently was very sick and was not listed on
101-degree fever.
Yeah, and was not listed on the injury report with illness in any way, shape, or form, which is just really frustrating, especially considering the quotes from the coaching staff was that he was over the back entirely, and he was listed with the back issue. So very frustrating situation there. They lose in Cleveland without AD only playing 8 minutes. They've ruled out LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Pat Beverly so far tonight. This is a different Lakers team than earlier in the season when they were without these guys, where you just really didn't see a lot of usage surrounding the team. So it was basically okay, let's jam Russ and see where we go from there. they've added Dennis Schroeder. They've added Thomas Bryant. There are some guys now that can create their own offense a little bit more, but it's still going to be a spot that you're certainly going to look to value because you remove Anthony Davis, you remove LeBron James, and there's tons to be had. So what are you expecting the lineup and rotation to look like for the Lakers tonight?
Yeah, so we're going to probably see definitely Schroeder, definitely Lonnie, definitely Troy Brown in LeBron's spot, definitely Thomas Bryant in that spot, and then I guess Austin Reeves makes sense.
I would think Reeves,
yeah. He kind of gives you some on-ball defense. You need kind of a little bit of lengthy defender, so I would expect it to be those guys. I honestly think Thomas Bryant's a really good play. You want off-ball shooting and spacing and a little bit of size against the Raptors. He checks every box. We saw his minutes get really long, so they need the spacing real bad. I expect a gazillion pick and pops with him. So I actually kind of like him. We saw his minutes leash get a little bit longer. He still has that wrap on his thumb, but I think it's a pretty good spot for Thomas Bryant. Curious if he's really cheap. I know you mentioned on Slack yesterday. If you had Thomas Bryant,
he was 3,100 last night. It was another one of these small slates where a backup center, because of an injury or whatnot, just lit the slate on fire very quickly. I don't know that the winner ended up having him, but it was one of these things where it was very, very tough to overcome because there wasn't a lot of other value yesterday. So I assume the price has not moved, and he's going to be very, 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 very cheap and very, very chalky.
And Westbrook should be pretty good, but regardless of starting or coming off the bench. And I kind of talked about this a little bit in matchups that even before this news came out, and now it's even more true because the way you want to beat the Raptors is controlling tempo, playing slower, don't let them run out. And now your offense is going to be led by, and I don't even know if the Mount Rushmore is there. He's like the George Washington of the Mount Rushmore for guys who like really push the tempo and stuff. So you're playing right into the Raptors' hands here. So it was already a really good bet at -6.5. I think this could be a big blowout. So you guys could talk more about that, or maybe I can. Gary, if you're listening to this and you don't feel good, I 100% got you. But yeah, there's garbage time concerns here. Big slate, so probably a lot of value. A lot of guys we're going to talk about. But yeah, we're already 12 minutes in, so we probably should move along.
All right, let's move to some of the questionables. A team that mass rested last game, the Indiana Pacers. There was no Tyrese Haliburton, there was no Miles Turner, there was no TJ McConnell. They are all questionable. Jalen Smith was added midday with the questionable tag as well. So a lot of moving parts here. They're going up against a Minnesota team that's been playing a little bit shorthanded since the cat injury. What's your read on Indy tonight?
Yeah, so Haliburton, right? We saw him get ruled out early for 2 games. He was listed with this groin thing last week, played through it, said he was dealing with it a little bit, obviously bothered him. They don't want to play him hurt. I don't have a great read on the situation. It's been a couple of days since he's been off, and it was never really a serious injury. So worst case, or I should say best case, he's going to be game time. They're going to want to see how he does in warmups and if it's bothering him at all. If it's bothering him at all, he's probably getting pulled, which easy part. Andrew Nembhard is A+ role. I mean, his role is like legit superstar. So pulling it up here just really quick. Well, I forget what the exact numbers are. I want to get the numbers. But anyways, he's first in touch time since he took over. First in touch time, first in potential assists. He has like 16 drives per game. He's like full on alpha status. He'll get if he does start, he will get a really bad matchup. Jaden McDaniels pressures the ball really well. He will be picking up the ball handler for sure. I don't think they would put him on Buddy or anybody else. So it would be a bad matchup. I'm curious to see what his price is and if he's going to be chalky, because that's probably a fade spot if it's, prices up and it's not like a no-brainer play. But he's just playing, I mean, my God. Like Rick Carlisle had a quote after the game saying like, I've been talking about him being a top 15 pick. He said, I'm elevating it. He's a top 10 pick now. And I mean, yeah, he beat the Warriors so bad that they're resting guys on a non-back-to-back road game. So, shout out to Andrew Nembhard, who, I was talking about early, and I almost put him on 150 when I saw him in the preseason. But
he's been exceptional. Plays really under control. Reminds me a lot of like Tyus Jones, who just like never makes mistakes basically, and like can come in as a backup and like put up big lines even in spot starts. We saw also, you can see there when they're really shorthanded without Miles Turner, without Haliburton, without TJ McConnell, the minutes really got condensed in the backcourt. Some of this was due to Aaron Nesmith just could not stop fouling, and that's why his minutes were really down. But you saw Hield and Mathurin both touch 40 along with Nembhard. O'Shea Brissett 32 off the bench. That was pretty much like a straight sub situation with Nesmith in terms of if you look at the minutes there. Whereas like Jalen Smith and Isaiah Jackson were like straight subs, basically looking to Hield, Mathurin, and Nembhard in the backcourt. And you see Trevelyan Queen 7 minutes, Kendall Brown 18 minutes. Those were the backups there. So while I think like a lot of this was exaggerated due to Neesmith's foul trouble, I don't think it's unrealistic to expect upper 30s minutes once again for Hield, Mathurin, and Nembhard if they're shorthanded once again. And obviously things could get really shorthanded if they're without Jalen Smith and Miles Turner in the front court. We know they have depth with O'Shea Brissett, Terry Taylor, Goga Batadze, Isaiah Jackson, but you could once again have a lot of value popping for Indiana in a much more difficult matchup for the center spot. Going up against Rudy Gobert, this would not be the greatest spot for Isaiah Jackson, even though we all love Isaiah Jackson.
I think the minutes could be good, though, right? It could be like his minutes don't get high. I think Gobert makes a lot of mistakes against the spread pick and roll stuff, and I think Isaiah Jackson can cover up with his verticality. So, very much a range of outcome situation. And if the price is cheap, I feel pretty good about him kind of smashing. Should mention fast game, man. I mean, both these offenses are flying. They're both top 4 in offensive seconds per possession. So, but the Wolves defense has been a lot better lately. They've been really elevating. They're cutting down on their wide open threes, giving up. I talk about that a lot. So they're really improving there. But yeah, pretty much summed it up on the front court. I think if they have Jalen, they might be a little bit more inclined to play big. They don't need as much, on-ball, switchy kind of defense. You want a little bit more length with Neesmith against the Warriors just to help your switching and stuff. I don't think they need it quite as much with the spread pick and roll and against the drop. So they might go bigger. I should mention Miles Turner listed with hamstring soreness, not a strain. Got the midday Q tag last time. So pretty rough read, given the situation, given the trade rumors. I don't know, but we'll see.
All right. The Jazz, who we were just mentioning in the Warriors game, Mike Conley's questionable. You wrote in the notes, likely back tonight. Talk more about your expectation of Mike Conley. Will there be any sort of minutes limitation there?
Yeah, he's been kind of ramping up for a bit. Never was any concern with the knee/leg injury that they're calling it. So I think he's back. I think he'll have a cap. I mean, they sit him out when he's healthy and back-to-back. So I can't imagine he plays a lot. Definitely expecting him to start, which obviously would kind of nuke Colin Sexton, who's been playing a pretty good bit. I think more or less Jordan Clarkson's unaffected. You could argue that Malik Beasley is slightly affected here because you're just kind of pushing it's mostly been on-ball stuff for Sexton, but you could kind of potentially push guys down that way. So it does affect Malik Beasley a little bit. We've also seen him kind of thrive since Conley went down. So that he has that working against him. Could also make a case that it does affect the bigs a little bit. Because again, if Malik Beaslly is hot, then they could only play 2 of these 3. I mean, it's not going to affect Laurie, just to be clear there. But I could see it affecting Vanderbilt or Olynyk, especially if the Warriors are bombing threes with Poole and stuff like that. But expecting Conley back with a kind of a soft-ish cap. It was never really a serious injury, and they're just taking their time with him because he's #old. Although I'm older.
All right. CP3, another older veteran point guard, questionable tag. Reports are that they expect him back tonight. Torrey Craig also relayed to beat writers that he expects to play tonight. So it sounds like we're going to have the Suns at their fullest strength we've seen in a week or two. Obviously, still no Cam Johnson, still no resolution of the Jay Crowder situation. But what are your thoughts on how the return of CP3 and potentially Torrey Craig impacts things tonight?
Probably a cap on CP3, right? We've seen his minutes not quite go too high. This thing was minor, man. I mean, when it happened, we were projecting him in when this thing first happened, called like with the little heel thing. So he's been practicing for a very long time. So I would expect not like you would take the top 20% of outcomes, but I think he could hit like 80%. So high end of like 32, low end of like 24. So I don't know what we projected at. I haven't looked at that yet, but I would expect it to be like upper 20s, which obviously is going to nuke campaign. They do have a little bit of depth issues, so I think we could see a little bit of overlap. I think you want additional ball handling with the way the Celtics are going to pressure them with their ball pressure as well. So I think Cam could get a little bit of overlap. His price is up, so you're not playing him in DFS. But that trickle down affects Damian Lee a little bit. Dario's going to go away with Torrey Craig back. Ish is going to go away. They got completely wrecked in the last game. Mikal Bridges' ball handling is going to get cut. We saw them run a lot of like even with him as the ball handler, getting screens with Booker and like those kind of actions too, that's going to go away a lot. So Mikal Bridges is going to be affected a lot. His minutes will be really strong. He'll be picking up. Honestly, I think it might be Torrey Craig guarding Tatum and then Mikal guarding Jaylen Brown. So Torrey Craig's availability really affects Jaylen Brown, who I don't think is as good of a scorer as Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum could just floor Mikal. But something to keep in mind there. Definitely expecting Torrey Craig to start. Never really concerned in injury. We'll have a cap on him because it's a soft tissue. And then Booker's high and stuff. Usage isn't going to be great, but we've seen Monty. He'll say, hey, 2 days ago, he'll say, oh, yeah, I don't want to play him big minutes. And then 2 games later, he's playing him 41 minutes, and he called himself a hypocrite because of it. So I think the minutes will be good for Booker. Don't love them. Don't hate the matchup. Boston and Phoenix had that very much like take away role playing score. So I think Booker could put up a pretty good game. But obviously the ball handling is going to go down. So the overall ceiling is going to get hit a little bit.
And you have listed on the notes here, Edmund Sumner, butt. And I don't know how much you want to go into Edmund Sumner's butt. But
Ooh.
I think we're already quite behind.
I was running it down and I moved to the bottom. So
okay. All right, let's move to the doubtfuls out tags. Clippers are sitting Luke Kennard, Marcus Morris, Norm Powell, and John Wall tonight. They're on the front end of a back-to-back. I do find it slightly peculiar that one of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard is not listed here, given like what they've done in the past, that they've played one of them and then played the other guy the next night. So I'm a little bit skeptical still. The matchup with the Magic is one that of the 2 games, you would think this is the softer one between this and the game in Miami tomorrow. What are your thoughts on the Clippers without all these secondary pieces tonight?
So the first thing I looked at was who they're playing in the back-to-back tomorrow. It is Miami. There's no chance in hell I'm betting Miami closing line value when Kawhi and Paul George get ruled out tomorrow. That said, someone's calling me. Leave me alone. Yeah, so matchup, right? They play a little bit bigger. We should mention Mo Bamba. We'll talk about him in a second. Actually, I forgot to put that on the list. That's my bad. So we'll talk about that now. But yeah, so I think they're going to start Batum. We saw Batum start one of those games. I think they've got some depth. I think they're going to want to play Moses Brown to fill some minutes that way to take away some of that Batum stuff. And I think you want more spacing as well. So I think he starts in Marcus Morris' spot. And then obviously the rest is easy. Zoo at the center spot, the 2-star wings, and Reggie Jackson. So the last time John Wall sat, just to kind of, before I get to Paul George, I just want to hit Reggie really quick so I don't forget. The last time John Wall sat, that was a game Reggie Jackson hurt his back. Not only did we see him sit on the bench, freak out, look like he was on like drugs and just in pain, the guy goes out there, smashes the Blazers, big comeback win, plays the whole second half. Just crazy. So there's a high minute ceiling for Reggie Jackson and a matchup I really like. The ceiling's not great because we've got Kawhi out there. Kawhi also coming off season high in minutes and points. Finally cracked the 14 mark. But yeah, I would expect, similar minutes for Kawhi. I think Paul could get up to 32, 33 in a matchup I like for him. So I think those guys are maybe Paul's more in play than Kawhi. So I don't think Kawhi's minute ceiling. But Paul came out of it okay. I definitely expected them to get fairly normal minutes, and then there's chances they're sitting tomorrow like 95%.
There's no way Kawhi's playing on a back-to-back.
Kawhi, no way. But
Paul, I don't know. Like I said, the fact that they're not sitting one of the 2 tonight makes me think they must feel good enough about Paul's health to play in both. But yeah, it's certainly a situation where Orlando's been really poor defensively, so there's a lot of opportunities to attack here with more value. The Reggie Jackson game before that, John Wall, was without Kawhi and PG. So, it's a little bit of a different in terms of their need for shot making, but being down Marcus Morris and Norm Powell too is kind of a big deal in terms of, if the Clippers are managing Kawhi's minutes and they're overlapping him with Paul George enough, there's a distinct need for shot creation that this roster doesn't have a lot of when you take away Luke Kennard, Norm Powell, Marcus Morris. And so it could be a really high minute ceiling night for Reggie Jackson for sure. Okay, let's move over to Washington where Bradley.
You want to hit Bamba really quick?
We can hit Bamba.
Yeah, so I think he may come off the bench. He's had nagging injuries. I think there's no chance they want to up his minutes given the way he's been kind of almost behind schedule. They've been warming him up and just haven't been playing him and ruling him out a little bit earlier than I thought. So, and they like front Mo Wagner. He picked up the Giannis matchup last game. I thought he played pretty well. Kind of kept the game, kept him, in check. Giannis Giannis only scoring 34 and 33 minutes, is admirable, I guess, considering the matchup I kind of liked. So I think that Franz and Mo have earned. I get my Wagner's mixed up. I expect him to start again the same way. So Paolo coming off a really bad game, I think he could rebound. Minutes have been pretty strong, but I would expect more or less to take away some of the small stuff. We see more of maybe not as much of a bowl ceiling as well.
All right, let's move to Washington, where the Wizards will be without Bradley Beal once again. We've seen them play this way quite a bit this season. It obviously helps Kyle Kuzma, it helps Kristaps Porzingis, helps Monty Morris a little bit too, which kind of goes a little bit underrated. What are your thoughts on how the Wizards look to replace Bradley Beal tonight?
Yeah, it's almost certainly going to be Corey Kispert. We've seen this movie before, as you mentioned. But, we're going to see a lot more Kyle Kuzma offense. We've seen Kuzma's on-ball, interior scoring, kind of lighted up, matchup against Patrick Williams, which we could talk about Caruso in a second. I think he's going to see mostly Patrick Williams, though. But kind of like his matchup, he had a pretty good game against them. He had the team high scoring the last time they played the Bulls, and it wasn't just three-point shooting. So Kuzma definitely benefits. Mentioned Monty, certainly higher ceiling. They don't run a lot of good. We see Goodman cut into his minutes, but Goodman's not like your classic ball handler. So it's, Monte is more of an organized offense, which you're going to need now that you've got Kispert as more of a catch and shoot guy, shot maker guy. So as you mentioned, it does help Monte a little bit. Kristaps, certainly more minute ceiling. Don't love the matchup. The Bulls are one of the toughest teams to get put back points on. We've seen Kristaps show up a little bit there. That Nets game, he had a big impact on the glass. But certainly a higher ceiling with more shots coming his way. He'll be a way bigger focal point.
All right, you mentioned Caruso. He's him and Javonte Green looking like they're going to be unavailable tonight for the Bulls. How does that impact the Bulls' rotation?
Yeah, so there's also some buzz coming on the rookie season, Dalen Terry. So you tie in the buzz with a little bit of an aggravation. We saw him listed with this ankle thing last week. I think he could sit. Obviously, Javante's out, so that adds a pretty big ceiling for Patrick Williams. They would obviously start Ayo Dosunmu in Caruso's place, which does hurt their defense. I think the Bulls have been playing a little bit better defense, and that's probably because of Caruso. So, they've been playing bad on offense, which you guys could talk about, or maybe you and I could talk about in the show. But, pretty straightforward. I do think if they're both out, I think they might consider bringing Terry in their rotation. So we'd have to look at maybe throwing him,
I think
4 or 5.
I think it's a matchup that you can sort of afford to do that. But they have a lot of guard depth. So I think it's really the Javonte Green absence that would open up potentially more for Dalen Terry than it is Caruso. It obviously removing Caruso is bigger minutes to remove, but they have Goran Dragic, they have Kobe White. They seem pretty comfortable with those guys. It's pretty clear you just slide Dosunmu in, have Kobe White be the backup 2, have Goran Dragic be the backup 1, and you go from there. Now the 3 spot without a clear backup there is Javonte Green. Makes it so that there's some minutes open there. And maybe that's where Dalen Terry can kind of fit in because he's a little bit longer. But yeah, if he plays, I doubt it would be, anything more than like 8 to 10 minutes would be my guess.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move over to the Pelicans. No Brandon Ingram still. Herb Jones also listed as doubtful. We've seen all sorts of different iterations from the Pelicans all year long with their health. What are your expectations tonight with the 2 wings likely missing another game here?
Should run it back here. They obviously like Alvarado off the bench. Dyson Daniels hasn't really done anything to make me think that he's not starting. So would expect that to go down again. Obviously, Trey Murphy looking big minutes. Matchup against a really bad Pistons team. They're I can't believe what happened yesterday. But can get into that, I guess, another day. Screw you, Miami. I actually didn't bet it yesterday. But Zion's going to just smash. We've seen Zion's ball handling come up. He's running the offense a bit more. TJ McCollum come a little bit rusty coming off that illness. Trey Murphy's minutes should be pretty solid. They don't need the wing defense as much, so I'm curious to see if it's a little bit. I should mention Devontae Graham's also on the injury report, so that's something that could be a little pushable
as well.
Yeah, so that could be something that could push his minutes up. But I think Alvarado's minutes could be really strong coming off the 38-point game. Just put Bones Highland in the doghouse, and Bones did get out of it last night. But yeah, it should be more or less a running back situation. If you don't got Devontae Graham, then you're probably bringing in Garrett Temple and running a similar rotation.
Yeah.
Just massive blowout. It's so hard to bet like an 11-point spread, but I don't know how this game's under 15, man. This is just such a mismatch. A team that can't protect the basket against a team that's putting pressure on the rim like crazy. Their defense is playing pretty well. They don't have enough ball handling. It's gonna be bad.
Yeah. All right, Terrence Davis for the Kings, potentially unavailable tonight. What are your thoughts on how the Kings would fill that role?
I mean, they don't really need to go there. I think they're going to want to play bigger anyways with Giannis, so that we probably would see a little bit more of Trey Lyles at the 4, probably bring in Casey Okpala to bring in some minutes as well. So that's pretty low on the totem pole. Should mention that De'Aaron Fox is a little bit out of the doghouse. He's been playing a little bit better defense lately, and he seems to have a safer leash. And quick matchup note, teams run a lot of pick and roll ball handler stuff against the Bucks. They are terrible at it per possession, but there's so much drop that a lot of those pick and roll ball handlers have a lot of decent shots to take. So if Fox gets hot, he's going to get volume here. So it's like a bad matchup per possession, but I could see him really chucking here. Again, should mention the Bucks are so good at taking away spot up plays, and the Kings are too. They lead the league in fewest wide open attempts allowed. So yeah, just to add, Giannis is my matchup cover boy. I think this game's gonna be close. It's gonna be push pace. I mean, just checks every box for a Giannis smash bot.
OKC, no Lou Dort tonight. Kenrich Williams still potentially out. OKC does a lot of things where they call up the G League guys like midday, so you kind of like never know who's available until right before the show that we do later on in the afternoon. So, what are your expectations on how Dort's role gets filled tonight?
So the Cambridge thing's really important to note because that's their on-ball defensive bucket. They're out of their top 2 options. They're down to really one guy left that's truly in that bucket. That's Aaron Wiggins. So I think Aaron Wiggins gets John Morant's matchup, I think. But they are asking a little bit out of Jalen Williams. If Jalen Williams starts and they don't start Aaron Wiggins, Jalen Williams can play so much. I think it's at a season high in minutes. I think he's going to have a pretty good chance to produce. They would trust his length. He's got a 7'2" wingspan. So I think if he picks up that matchup, man, that's just like I'm gonna be just glued to that. My Thunder. Not my guy though.
Well, we almost had a fine.
No, my Thunder. That was good. I will. There's of all the things there's zero chance I'm gonna slip up on Jalen Williams because I'm so tilted about it.
You're not gonna.
Horford protocols.
Okay.
Al Horford's out for protocols. We can get to that in a little bit.
All right. Yeah, let's.
Just put a bow on that really quick. This is great news for John Morant. Dort has cut him down hard. 5 of 20 from the field in the last game. Only scored 11 points against him 2 games ago. So Dort has had his number. So John Morant, after being rested for a game, I could see a big spot for him coming now.
All right, let's talk about the Celtics. Malcolm Brogdon is listed probable and expected back tonight. We thought that was going to be the case with Al Horford, but I guess not. So what's your expectation on how the Celtics handle things tonight?
Makes me like DeAndre Ayton a lot, number one. Number two, Blake's going to start. Blake burned us. We had an under on him. He played great, man. Like, he didn't really make mistakes. He just kind of he just is trusting the ball movement on this team, and they're so good at finding someone who's cutting at the right time and just knowing where to be. That offense just rewards you so well, whether it's being in the right spot for threes and being for cutters. So would expect the same starting lineup. I was a little surprised that they brought Derek White in the first unit. Definitely going to want another on-ball defender here with CP3. So I'd be pretty surprised if it's not the same starting lineup that we saw last time with Smart, White, Brown, Tatum, and Blake Griffin. And we'll see if he can handle DeAndre Ayton down there. It should be it's definitely it's a pretty big piece of news for a game I'm really excited about tonight.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I think it's like very likely that it's Blake Griffin, but I think there's like an outside chance it's like Noah Vonleh.
Oh man,
like a very outside chance. In which case I wouldn't be super excited to invest in that. I think that would be just like let's try to have somebody like deal with Ayton. But I think it's overwhelmingly likely that it's Blake. I would note with Blake, I think it's one of the things that I was thinking about with our projection that I think I probably need to start adjusting is he's only taking shots that like are very hard to miss. So his shooting percentages are way up this year with Boston, and based on the shot quality and shot profile, I think it's actually kind of legitimate. All right, the Grizzlies. You mentioned Ja Morant's expected return tonight. He is not listed on the injury report. They still have Zaire Williams questionable and Jake LaRavia doubtful, so there's still some issues on the wings. They're, of course, without Desmond Bane as well there. I think we handled Memphis really well last time in terms of projecting the limited rotation. The one area that we missed is we did not project as much overlap for Kennedy Chandler and Tyus Jones as we saw last game. That to me is a signal right away that, if they're without Zaire Williams again tonight, we could see Tyus Jones play a ton. If they're willing to play Kennedy Chandler with Tyus Jones in overlap, I'm sure they're willing to play Tyus with Ja Morant in overlap to kind of cover up some of those minutes. Some of this was influenced by Dillon Brooks' foul trouble. He still got up to 34 minutes, but he was in foul trouble kind of throughout the game. What are your thoughts on how Memphis handles the absence of Jake LaRavia, Desmond Bane, potentially Zaire Williams while getting Ja Morant back tonight?
So based on how the Grizzlies file returning from injury, I feel pretty good about Zaire Williams playing.
Okay.
He's been out for a while. He's past his prognosis. We saw when Jaren Jackson was back in a very similar situation, a little bit longer timeline. Got the doubtful tag, got the buzz before the doubtful tag, got the questionable tag and played. So feel pretty good Zaire is going to play. They don't need a lot of minutes out of it anyways. He'll be essentially moving into David Roddy's role. And then Roddy would be moving up kind of in where Jake LaRavia's role was. So Roddy being more of a they've almost played him as like a 2-3, and they almost played him as a 2-3. They've been playing.
They were,
because they didn't have any depth there. So now they're going to play him more as a 3-4. So I would expect that to be the case, and then you obviously just don't need anybody else. You got your Santi behind Jaren Jackson, you got Brandon Clark behind, so your rotation's real clean. So now you got your 10-man. So does that mean Tyus Jones coming off the best game of his life? Do you dare not overlap him with Ja and just not reward him that way?
I mean, he's averaging this season. They're averaging about like 6-7 minutes of overlap per game when they're both playing. I think it's going to be around there again. He's just playing. He's playing too well. And like I think the return of Zaire Williams, while yes, it theoretically impacts the ceiling of Tyus Jones, and Tyus Jones isn't really DFS relevant unless Ja's sitting, so it doesn't matter. And Ja's not listed on the injury report. But just talking through the rotations, I think it impacts Dillon Brooks' ceiling a little bit more than it impacts Tyus Jones. I think they're very comfortable with the combination of the way Tyus plays and also getting, Ja a few minutes out there where he doesn't have to bring the ball up. Like they can sort of rest Ja a little bit more with that. So I wouldn't be surprised if Dillon Brooks ends up topping out at like 31-32 instead of what looked like 36-37 last game. Because of some of this expanded depth. And then would also just note that you alluded to the rotation being pretty clean, and like Brandon Clark really didn't benefit last game. He was like straight, back up to Santi Aldama, a little bit of 5 minutes. With Jaren Jackson and Steven Adams and Brandon Clark and Santi Aldama, they have most of those 4 minutes covered. But if they're sliding any to David Roddy to cover some 4 minutes there as well, I think that really impacts the ceiling on Steven Adams. So just be careful with Steven Adams because I could see the minutes coming down to like 25, 26 more consistently than what we've seen this season.
Just to be clear on the 10-man, it's pretty obvious. It's because John Contra is back as well. So you've got Ja, Tyus. I guess it would be Dillon. Dillon probably be the wing. Dillon Contra would be the wings, backed up by Roddy and Zaire. And you got Jaren Jackson, Santi Aldama, Steven Adams, Brandon Clark. So very clean 10-man.
Yeah, and the difference for them is just how you shake up, because they do move positions around. It's not straight subs that who gets the more overlap, and I think Tyus has earned that personally. Okay, the Pistons haven't filed yet. They're on the second night of back-to-back, so we're still waiting on information there. And then there were some Knicks rotation news reporting about Cam Reddish and Derrick Rose no longer being a part of the rotation, and Tibbs going to a 9-man. What would you like to let the people know about that?
Yeah, I would push back on calling it reporting, because Tibbs basically said the word 9, probably 9 times. Shot Ferris Bueller, but this rotation's not changing. Like there's almost zero chance that we're going to see this rotation change from what's on screen here. we'll see the second unit of being Obi getting no overlap. In this matchup, I don't think it's any overlap with Julius Randle, which is why we actually bet Mitch Robinson overs. We don't have as much edge here projection-wise, but a lot of us feel really good about this bet. Really good matchup against the Hawks for centers. We've seen centers crush them. They're going to need Capella. They're going to need Mitch and Capella a lot. But it looks like Miles McBride has overtaken the Rose role, which is just straight backup. And then we're seeing Quickly as kind of the wingy guy who could fill in when needed to behind the 2 and the 3. But they're going to need Quentin Grimes. They put Quentin Grimes, his defensive role has really grown. He'll be getting the Trey assignment here. I would expect RJ Barrett to pick up the DeJounte Murray matchup there. So, we actually, the second, and we talked about this too in our Slack, that, now that you need your 2 ball handlers, you're putting your 2 best ball handlers on defense in the first unit. You're really forcing against the Hawks. You're really forcing that first unit to push up their minutes, because Tibbs is so first unit, second unit based with how he subs in and how he subs out and who he decides to close with, that this rotation really, really helps the floor and ceiling for the starters. So just wanted to note that.
Yeah, and Knicks fans, especially Gary's not feeling super well today. I hope you're not watching right now, because the other thing that was reported with the Knicks was that I saw some reporting that suggested that they might be willing to attach Emmanuel Quickly to Evan Fournier's contract to get off of Fournier, which would just be an epic Knicks move if they did something like that. But yeah, McBride is, McBride compared to Rose, it's just like such an easy situation that was obviously going to take time for Tibbs to figure out and work through, because he's got such a commitment to Derek. But you don't need the things that Derek does when you have Quickly on the floor, and you need the things that McBride does when you have Quickly on the floor. So it just kind of made sense that they eventually got to this. All right, that will do it.
I think the only note I wanted to add was with Minnesota, just because I have to. Chris Finch said that he wants to keep Slow-Mo's minutes in the mid-20s. We saw his minutes really spike up because there was obviously some ejections over the weekend.
Foul trouble.
Yeah, he's had some back injuries, so he's not an injury report, but just something I want to know. We've seen them start window way more than I had thought. So he should play window less, but he's playing window more.
Just a reminder to support the people who support us. This show is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. They have daily NBA snake drafts for money running, in addition to many formats of NFL contests still running for huge prizes. They just released another NFL playoff best ball contest today. I got an email notification on it. $10 entry. I think it was $100K up top. If you're playing NBA Pick'em, in-season subscribers can use our tools to compare ETR projections to their fantasy Pick'em games. And if you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, use promo code ETR for a matching deposit bonus up to $100. That's promo code ETR at underdogfantasy.com. I nailed it, thank God, after yesterday's show. And because I nailed it, now is the time.
Yeah.
Now is the time. Yesterday's show wasn't deserving of your clicks, but today's show, I think, was deserving of the clicks. So if you'd like to support us, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel, get notifications whenever we go live. You could also join us behind the paywall, subscription oriented, today at 5:00 Eastern time with myself and perhaps Mike Gallagher, perhaps Gary Hartman. We're waiting to see if Gary's feeling any better, but we will be breaking down the 11-game DFS slate for you. And of course, you can join us for props as well. We're on quite the prop run. I think it's like 9 straight winning days, 5-0 last night, up 70 units on the season so far. So, if you want to join us for player props, as always, read the FAQ if you are interested in joining us for player props, because props is a commitment. It is the books will remove lines very quickly, but we've done very well with it. If you'd like to join us there, if you're uninterested,
Discord too, man. Even if you don't hit the props, a lot of people in Discord say it's worth it in itself. But really good community. Shout out to anybody who's listening over there, and you guys are great. And we really appreciate you guys showing us love for. Even when you guys don't hate us when we have bad days, but when things go well, we appreciate the love.
Appreciate it. As always, also, if you enjoyed this content, please consider clicking, smashing, or pressing that like button. You got to feed the algorithm to feed our families with those clicks. So appreciate you. We will be back with another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis show tomorrow at 2:00 Eastern. Take care, everybody. See you then.